In this lesson, we'll be creating puppet pins and manipulating them in After Effects. So we have our project open, and let's take a look at what we have here. We have a spaceman, and he has an alpha around him. And so if you see all this transparency, we're able to see through him. And he's on his own layer, so he doesn't have any other layers that make him up. But then we have all these other yellow layers down here. And these are all making up this spaceship. And so we can, as we can turn these off, you can see all the different layers that make that up. And then we have this background layer. All right, so let's go ahead and grab our puppet pin tool. And we're going to select our spaceman layer. And let's just go ahead and add a pin to him. And so you can do this by just clicking anywhere on the spaceman. And so we're going to just click on his face. And now we've added a pin. And it looks like I might have even moved him when I added that. Let's hit reset. And let's see, we have, there we go. Now we have a pin there for his face. And if I click and move, I can move that pin around, and it is now moving our mesh. It's not moving the position of our layer. So if I were to open up the position for the layer, so if I hit P on my keyboard, and watch when I move this pin. I'm not moving my layer, and you can even see the layer boundaries here, or the layer controls around the edges here of my comp. They are not moving. I'm just moving that mesh. That mesh has somehow enveloped his alpha layer, and it's just moving him around. Now let's watch if I hit E on my keyboard. It pulls up my my effects for my puppet. I hit reset on that. It'll move him back into place, but it doesn't take away my pin. Now let's go ahead and let's add some more pins here, and I'm going to add one to his hand and to his other hand. And so when I click and move, now I'm not moving that entire mesh or that entire the entire mesh. So let's go ahead and turn on our mesh so we can see what's happening here. So if you look up above your composition panel, you have a little box that you can select, and that will show the mesh that you've created. So when you add a pin to that layer, then it also adds that mesh, and that mesh is what you're really deforming. And so if I click and move this pin, then since these other two pins have been established, then it's not able to move those pins around. It's trying to move this mesh around. So let's go ahead and add some more pins here. We'll add some for his knees and for his feet. And let's go ahead and add some for his shoulders also. And so if you click and move these pins, then you're really able to get some crazy distortion. And so, I can actually change the way he looks just by clicking and dragging and pulling these pins around. And I can also, if I'm off of the mesh, I can click and drag, and then I can select those other pins or any kind of pins that's inside that selection box. And then while they're all selected, then I can move them around. So let's take a look at what's happening in our layers. So let's open up our puppet, and then open up the mesh, and then you open up deform. And so you can see all of these different pins that I've added here, and you can see the ones that are selected. So if I wanted to grab his head, remember that was puppet pin 1, and let's open that up. Then his position, you can see, has been keyframed. Now, we didn't add any keyframes. Do you remember adding any keyframes? Well, that is the default. When you add a pin, then it also adds a keyframe. So what does that mean if I were to move further down the timeline then? So since we have all these keyframes, if I were to move his head or move his shoulder, anything like that, then it will record that movement. So it's very important that you remember not to be anywhere else in your timeline except where you want to be, because if you were to, let's say, oh wait, I need to move that shoulder back, but I forgot that I had moved that timeline, then I'm actually going to record all that movement, which actually looks like he's doing some cool like dance move or something. And so let's move actually a little bit further down in our timeline. We'll move to about the 2-second mark, and let's go up to where it says puppet. And there's this little reset button. So when I do that, then it resets my spaceman back to his original shape. So it kind of took all the deformations out of that mesh, and it moved the pins back to where they should be. But it didn't take away any of the other keyframes. So instead, it just added that, moving him back to the original state as movement. So if I were to move down a little further past the 2-second mark, so we'll go about 2.5 seconds, and if I were to move his feet again, or even his hands, something like that, and then move down to about 3 seconds and hit reset again, then now it's recorded all those movements. And so you can actually use the reset as a way to kind of add to your animation. So now we have all this different movement here. So if we wanted to get rid and just kind of reset everything, then you can actually hit reset and then hit reset again. And so now what that did was, when we hit reset again, then it actually got rid of all those pins. And so now we're back where we started. And so even though we do have a mesh, so if you get your puppet pin, you can see that we have a mesh. We just don't have any pins there. So we can go ahead and we can add our pins back through his shoulders and his hands. And so it's might be a little bit quicker way to kind of get all those pins back, or to get him back to his original shape if you wanted to start over, than to try and get rid of all the keyframes that we had created. So there we have, we've created some keyframes, and in our next lesson we're going to understand a little bit more about the puppet mesh.